that drive and have the voice in this whole process.
I find it very interesting in a place like the West End or Avondale or over the Rhine, these corner stores, which they're there, but what's offered usually is, these are not the little tiny grocery stores you find in New York City in every block. These are really selling, for all practical purposes, junk food, right?
Yeah, they're not healthy options, they're expensive options, and one of the things that our team did was we did a shop along with some residents of the West End. And
oh, really?
It was eye-opening just to see what options were there, not only the transportation issues that some of the residents experience, but then also just how few options they have for where to go to the store. So for example, where I live, I have 3 options within 1 mile, and they're great stores, and I have lots of access to healthy food. And also the education and the understanding of the budget of how to distribute that food over a month. And what we've learned from traveling with them and doing focus groups is there's some work in terms of evening out the access and also the education for those residents. And so, that's an important piece is knowing what's available and knowing what to do with that healthy food.
Cady, you raised a very important point. So it's not just about increasing access. It's increasing access and education go hand in hand.
Right.
So you really have to address both together, because just because you may increase the access to healthier food at a corner store doesn't mean that people will know what to do with that food, or, as you said, how to create a budget that they can then work from on a monthly basis, because there's this perception that it costs more to eat healthy, which is not true. But it takes a little bit more planning. Right, exactly. So you can stretch, produce, you can, beans, there are many healthier options that can extend longer.
Right, I was going to say, as an example, one of the persons in the focus group talked about how they would buy prepared food, and for example, chicken that had already been cooked, and it was considerably more expensive. And we saw in this shop along, many of the products were more expensive options than, for example, how I'd been raised to buy an entire chicken and cook it in a crock pot while I was at work, and it was about a $4 fryer that would last 2 days or more for my family of 5. And so there's a big difference in budgeting your time and your funds for healthy food options.
And along that, we actually have created a nutrition train the trainer. So we are training individuals. We now have 80 people who have graduated as of actually this week, and they can now train other people in the community, in their churches, community-based organizations, to eat healthy and cook healthy, because it's such a huge issue. There are so many, it's very complex, as you've said.
There's such an irony about this, because as a historian, it's one thing in the history of low-income people or people who were on farms or even in the city, one thing they could do was cook. And people talk about, my grandmother cooked this, and they could cook, and these are skills that have been lost.
Right.
And it's because we've gone to everything comes out of a package.
Right.
And it's just amazing how much that's changed.
Right.
To what extent is someplace like Kroger's or other supermarkets, to what extent are they willing to engage in this conversation?
I think that access to food is an issue that obviously they're concerned about. I think that the model that they have may not lend itself to the populations that we're working with, because they don't have cars. They're relying on bus routes to get them to that supermarket. Can you imagine with a child or even a senior getting on a bus and carrying a week's worth of groceries? It's pretty hard. And in our city, you have to take maybe 1 to 2 stops or transfers.
And that gets at the bus system, which is a whole other issue.
That's a whole other issue, the transportation barrier.
It
is a big part of the issue. I know when I got into working in this issue of food deserts, I didn't think about it. I have a car. I'm able to drive wherever I need to go. So when I then stepped back and had to look at it through the eyes of people in the communities that we're working with, and see that if I were walking,
completely different.
And carrying a bag, not a small bag of groceries, and bringing my daughter along with me, that would be very challenging, and I wouldn't be able to carry too much.
Right.
And so that becomes a barrier. In addition to not having.
We're just about out of time, but this meeting, I want to pull up the full screen here. This is a meeting on Thursday night, beginning of 5:30, and last an hour. And how many people do you hope will come, and what will happen there? Will you actually do some analysis with them?
We hope to have at least a couple dozen people show up of any age, of anyone's welcome, anyone who cares about healthy food in the West End particularly, and really just to come and share their opinions and be willing to learn some things with us.
And be a part of being trained to be the solution.
That's
Okay.
right.
And I also had the email up, or the website up, but because it's not there anymore, www.
closingthehealthgap.org, and we also invite everyone out to our annual Health Expo on April 28th.
Very good. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
And after a short break, we'll return with an artist who has created a wonderful new book about the religious art in local churches. Welcome back. In the Christian calendar, today is Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week, leading up to Easter next Sunday. Over the centuries, art in Catholic churches, sculpture, murals, stained glass, was commissioned and created to tell the story of salvation and to inspire prayer and reflection. A new coffee table book by a local art photographer, Robert Flischel, is entitled Messages of Glory: The Narrative Art of Roman Catholicism. This book gathers the artistic output of local and international artists from 50 greater Cincinnati Catholic churches. I am joined now by Robert Flischel, whose past work helped us all see the beauty of accumulated art in the old school buildings in Cincinnati, as well as the new architecture of the University of Cincinnati. His photographs have appeared in Lifetime, Newsweek, Smithsonian, as well as the corporate collections of Synergy, H.J. Heinz, Walt Disney, and Procter & Gamble. Bob, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Good to see you,
It's really good to see you. This is a beautiful new book. And how long was this sort of poking around in your head?
This book has quite a history. It was originally intended to be the first of four examining the great institutions of our community. For one reason or another, it moved to the back of the class, and in a way a very good thing, because it gave me more time to fully develop the idea and to get a story that was really important to tell.
Yeah, and figure out a way to break it up. In the introduction, one of the introductions that Father Christopher Armstrong wrote, he mentioned the importance of Father Don Tenover to you and to him, and about raising consciousness of the incredible art in local churches. In 1995, I interviewed Father Tenover about the massive Stations of the Cross that are at St. Peter in Chains down in the cathedral that were created in the 1950s. Let's take a listen to his interview.
Then we thought about the only examples that we have of the decoration of any Greek painting, and that was the decoration of Greek vases. And this is what we thought about, that the life of Jesus in his suffering and in his walk to Calvary, all of this could be depicted in the form of Greek vase painting.
When I saw your book, when I read that passage, I just wanted to because Father Tenover has since died, but as somebody who really understood the art of local churches.
He inspired so many generations of priests and lay people on the importance of ecclesiastical art. He was a phenomenal person.
And not just teaching about it, but also having a direct hand in the renovation, the reimagination of St. Peter's.
Right.
But one of the interesting things is that you focus on art from 50 different churches from all over the tri-state, and tremendous cross-section of styles, forms. How did you find all of these? Did you just...
Well, it culminated into an idea where if you took the basic elements of art, and that would be clay, paint, glass, metal, stone, and combine those in a way that created a beautiful story of the history of this art and the type of artisans that created it. Because believe me, between the Irish and the Germans, they went for the brass ring when it came to reaching into Europe or reaching the best artisans in the community to put this story together.
You know, one of the people that you focus on, and we have his painting of the Sermon on the Mount, is a local artist, Lippert, Leon Lippert.
Leon Lippert.
And I'd like to be able to see. There it is. You can see, and it jumps out in the book in a way it doesn't on our screen. But there's actually a couple of pieces from Lippert that you have in the book, and a little different style.
This is an amazing story. In Divine Mercy Parish, or the Old Sacred Heart Church in Bellevue, Kentucky, he literally went from one end of the church, and it's a big church, to the other and did a continuous mural defining every major aspect of Catholicism. And so I was, whenever I needed to tell a certain part of the book, I would have that as a default to go back and say, okay, I need the Transfiguration. I need it now. There it was. And it's...
I did an interview, a story a few years ago on Leon Lippert with his grandson, who also did, and I've got a little piece. It's not from that work. It's from another church in northern Kentucky. Let's just take a little listen to that.
Sure.
What strikes everyone is the fact that they are painted on copper, which is quite unusual. They're more stylized than a lot of his other work too, almost as if he has outlined the figures in a way that kind of makes them jump out of their background.
It's a self-portrait of Leon Lippert that he painted of himself. And I just find those murals, the color is different than the Stations of the Cross here. His treatment is different. They're just, and you're obviously fascinated by them because they do keep popping up in the book. So there's another piece of art that I really find, obviously it's important to you because it's the cover art for your book, and it's of St. Elizabeth. And tell us a little bit about this. We've got both a full shot of this and we've got a close-up of the face, but why is this, I mean, you clearly chose this as your cover.
Yes, and it's an important piece because F.X. Zettler was a great glassmaker from Munich, and he was in competition with Tiffany and the great other Munich glassmakers. And when I first saw this in Old St. Elizabeth Church in Norwood, which is now Vineyard Central Community Church, I thought the way the light hit it, the beauty of the work, the painting is painted on the glass and then fused by heat. And it's the type of picture that sticks with you, and it's stuck with me this whole process, and I just wanted to use it because it's evocative and powerful.
You know, if we go back to that just one second, you know, you title this The Narrative Art of Roman Catholicism, and that stained glass window really is a narrative. It's telling a story about a saint that probably most people don't know, never maybe even heard of. This is St. Elizabeth of Hungary, and literally being driven out of the castle with her children into the snow.
Yes.
So it's one of these great little stories that just pops up that most people wouldn't know otherwise.
You know, initially you think, oh, that's the Blessed Mother and baby Jesus, but when you look at the picture, you think, well, this is quite a dramatic retelling of a story of.
You know, one of the other pieces that you focus on in the book is a relief sculpture. You do a lot with sculpture, but there's a relief sculpture of Mary, and I really am fascinated by the way that the light bounces off of this, and almost, even though it's sculpture, in one way almost comes through from the back.
Yeah.
Yes, in St. William's. This is really a beautiful piece.
Oh, it's a carved limestone probably, and that whole church is an amazing statement. And that was Father Tenover again. He directed the restoration of that whole church. And that's why I want the East Siders to cross the Great Divide and go to the West Side, and I want the West Siders to come over, and then everybody go to Northern Kentucky. So that there should be an opportunity to take a little pilgrimage around the community and see this great art.
And there is a map, by the way, that just shows, that shows the spread. We can bring that up. And this is truly a regional project. It is East Side, West Side, and Northern Kentucky.
And we snuck down to Maysville, too.
Snuck down to Maysville, okay. So there you go. So 50 churches. And so this could really be, if you get the book.
You can use the book as a guide, and you could break it up into, I want to see the great stations, or I want to see the great mysteries, or whatever, and you could have fun.
I want to first off congratulate you on the book. Secondly, let people know if you'd like more information about Messages of Glory, check out the website Robert A. Flischel.com, Messages of Glory, or you can just go to Google. I find that a lot simpler.
Right.
The site will allow you to page through the book, but I want to assure you it does not capture the brilliance of the art and the painting that appears in the book and the way you've captured it with your camera. Thank you very much, Bob.
Pleasure.
Okay. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, I'll be joined by the woman who has achieved the highest rank in the history of the Cincinnati police force on the eve of her retirement. Have a good week.